Hello, welcome to Judgmental Horror Junkies, Episode 1, where we watch a movie and talk about it. It's a very simple concept, always of the horror genre. This is Reno Dino Valentino, head doctor at the Asylum of the Insane and Goreship, the ship that forever sails along the river Styx. It's your lovely guides for this grand adventure.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
I worked on it all of 3 seconds, so you know it was good.
I don't believe you're a learned doctor at all.
I don't believe you're a ship, Goreship, but we're playing the cards that our nicknames have given us. And why don't you tell us what movie we're doing this month?
Alright, so for our first episode, we are going to do a new movie. That is actually a reboot, recalibration, remake of one of my all-time favorite movies and love it or hate it franchises. And that is the new Hulu original Hellraiser remake, based off Clive Barker's 1987 Hellraiser, which is also inspired from his original book series, or his novellas, as well as his book that influenced the entire original movie, The Hellbound Heart.
Yes.
Now, we've in the past, before we ever considered doing the podcast, had discussed the different stories that I let you read, you know, like the Scarlet Gospel, Hellbound Heart, the entire collection. I own an entire book that talks about the film's franchises and their legacies. And it's a very muddled and at times bleak history. It sucks. There's no nice way to say it, because as much as I love this franchise, I am not going to deny that it is not without its problems.
They weren't all winners.
No.
They weren't all winners.
No, and it's nice that with Hulu's new release of this movie, this reboot, this recalibration, with an awesome job done by Jamie Clayton, the lead Cenobite, or the Hell Priestess, that Doug Bradley once made famous, known as Pinhead.
And Pinheadess in this one, a lady Pinhead.
But it's nice to see this movie getting a new generation of fans into the Hellraiser mythos, because it's gruesome. It's very gory. It's a nice new take, especially we'll talk a little bit further into the costume designs of Cenobites versus today's against 1987's original version, which was all leather, baby.
Yeah,
a lot of leather.
Yeah, a lot more skin showing. Not just over skin, but under skin.
Exactly.
Where it's been peeled back than the original.
And so this all started with a young Clive Barker in 1987 putting out this movie. And before he put out this movie, he basically signed away his rights to the creative property that was the Hellraiser franchise. And it's for lack of a better term, is a way to sign your soul to the devil of Hollywood. Yeah. Hollywood. It allowed him to make... They got
the money for you to make your dream, and there'll be strings attached.
Exactly, exactly. Like, he got to make his baby, his passion project, and not only did he get to do that, he got to do it with everyone of his choosing. These were a lot of people that he went to his British acting schools with, including a young Doug Bradley. They did many of plays together on stage, and did many of shows in England when they both did their practice at the workshop, which was the name of their artist group, was the workshop.
Oh, okay.
He brought all those guys on, practical effects artists, light specialists, actors, to come in to be the Cenobites, to be the lead actors, to be the lighting directors, the content creators.
Best boy, Mike Gaff told her.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was the best thing about this original one. We don't need to talk about any of the ones that come after it, because this new Hellraiser remake is essentially trying to be a recalibration reboot of the very first one.
Right, it's a reboot. So let me ask a quick Hellraiser history question. Is this been the first reboot? Has technically every movie up to this one been from that same original movie in the same universe with the same, or have they tried to do soft reboots?
Oh, they've all been sequels. They've all been terrible.
But they've all been from in this universe.
Yes.
So this is the first time we've tried rebooting the Hellraiser.
Yep,
that's exciting.
That's another reason why I think it's a shame that you see negative comments solely just because of, it's a female Pinhead, which comes from the comics. I will get into further detail about that and the theories that go with it.
Right.
But right now, Yeah, the original version, the 1987 release, all the movies that came after it were direct sequels. Yeah. Even leading up to right before this movie was made, there was one that came out in, I believe, 2017, called Hellraiser Judgment. And that was the last straight-to-DVD, straight-to-streaming release movie that they were allowed to make from Dimension Films. Because, after that, Clive Barker won a monumental lawsuit to get his property back, to regain the rights to the Hellraiser franchise. And this is something that other directors are now trying to do who once had properties like, I don't know, Friday the 13th. Or, the Nightmare on Elm Street properties have gone through that battle. Mm-hmm. But Clive Barker won, got the rights back, and what did he do? Immediately he's like, alright, the next time we make a Hellraiser movie, I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to make sure it's true to the story that I want to tell. It will not be a direct remake of the original. He said that from the get-go back in 2019 when he won the case. Mm-hmm. It was all sealed and dealed. And right after he won, he immediately had a project lined up with Hulu. That's why the movie came out so quickly within a 3-year turnaround. Yeah. And, I'm sure it got pushed back a little bit more because of the pandemic stuff. Of course. Which is unfortunate. But I think it still played off pretty good in the end. My overall look on the movie is that I liked what it was. It didn't try to completely rehash the old movie. It was its own thing. They paid plenty of good homages to the originals with famous lines that were said, or even famous visual aspects that were used. Mm-hmm. They kind of replayed them thanks to Clive Barker being like, alright, I can't not let this be in the movie. Yeah. So, you know me. You know that I love this franchise. I have it tattooed on me. I have a pinhead tattoo.
You would say it is your favorite a horror movie character.
It was something that stuck with me all through growing up.
Right. Like, you would rank him above all others. Yeah. Like Pinhead, or the Cenobites as a whole, above any other horror movie franchise characters.
Oh, definitely. Okay. Because it's like one character, kind of like a Freddy Krueger, he actually has a mythos that they tried to establish throughout different films. Yeah. And thank God they did, because it spawned movies. The movies spawned comic books and graphic novels and stuff like that, and actually helped build even further with the extra books and graphic novels and stuff. So, me, personally, if we're going to give it a 10 scale rating, I'm not going to give it a perfect 10. I'm going to give it about an 8.9. And I say that just because there are certain things where, like, bro, turn up the lighting sometimes. Like, the editing does not need to be that dark. I get it. We're in a nighttime scape. But what happened to old school movies back in the 90s and the 80s and even early 2000s where nighttime was just kind of a blue, dark blue lighting filter. It wasn't actually complete shadow where you couldn't hardly see your actors. Yeah. You know? So that's, mine mainly comes down to a visual aesthetic, not so much a complaint with the story, because they did find ways to answer every question, in my opinion. Yeah.
I had a lot of questions, like, at the beginning, and by the end I had hardly any.
There's only a couple dangling threads left at the end of the movie, and I feel that, obviously has to be on purpose if they plan on doing a sequel. I think the turnaround has been good enough to do a sequel. Yeah. So in my opinion, 8.9 out of 10, what would you consider?
Okay, well, coming from I've seen probably 2 or 3 of the Hellraiser movies. I liked them. I was a Nightmare on Elm Street kid as far as horror franchises, and even more than that, like the sillier franchises. When I was young, I was obsessed with little monsters. So Gremlins, Critters, Ghoulies, like even the Puppet Master franchise. When you had little things running around fucking people up, that was my bag. But I'd seen the Hellraiser, and like, I loved it for what it was. Like, it was an amazing film because you could feel the mythos kind of like, to use a both sexual and Hellraiser-ish term, you could feel the mythos kind of throbbing underneath, and it was very much like the Star Wars franchise before, when there was just one movie, where they would hint at other things, like, oh, he fought in the Clone Wars, and you would be like, ooh, what are the Clone Wars? Yeah. I wish I knew more about that. I remember watching the first Hellraiser movie, and they would just hint at other things, like how vast this universe was. And I thought it was great. And you paired that with amazing actors and special effects that just fucking, for the 80s, were mind-blowing.
And I'm so glad that practical effects are making a comeback. Practical effects over CGI any day. I know it costs a little bit more money, but I think the overall...
At least in the horror franchise. You got wiggle room in fantasy and sci-fi. But in the horror franchise, it's gotta feel meaty. You got to feel that meat.
Your monster should look like it's something that I could really reach out and touch, not something that my hand might accidentally cause it to glitch if I touch it.
Yeah,
you know,
like the Matrix will start shaking if I touch it too hard.
So
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's very respectable.
Yeah,
especially...
I loved the sets, and I loved, with the exception of a few parts that were too dark, the cinematography I thought was really cool. There were some really good shots, like from the beginning where what was his name? Serena?
Yeah.
Was receiving the box, like that kind of like village, all the way to the scene where like Riley's on the what do you call the carousels that you pull?
I've always just called it a carousel.
Okay, even though there's no horses.
I mean, it goes around in a circle and you spin your friends.
But there's
on
a shot where it's over her head and she's just slowly spinning unconscious, and you can see the box in her hand. Like there are lots of little cinematography bits like that that were just very, very good. So,
there's one thing that I enjoyed.
High rankings.
Just in regards to the character work of this,
mm-hmm.
I feel, now some people who are movie critics and reviewers have posted their comments online and it's been, mostly a loud minority. I'm not going to call you a loud majority because there's not enough of people complaining for it to really make a dent in the reviews of a movie or sway my opinion. Yeah. And I found that 9 out of 10 times, people who leave these negative reviews, their opinion on horror is always shitty. And I say that because they take the best horror movies that I've found near and dear to my heart, mm-hmm. and they rip them down and say everything that's wrong with them, not realizing that some of those things that you consider wrong with them are what make them amazing.
Yeah.
Prime example. A lot of people are complaining about this new modern horror movie take on everything's a metaphor for a larger real problem. I'm like, that's what horror's always been. Horror's always been a metaphor. Yeah. Most writings are metaphors for real world issues that are occurring in today. And for example, this one in the 2022 release of Hellraiser, people are like, oh, it's just a big metaphor for people being in addiction, the state of addiction, the hopelessness of addiction, and how you live your life and treating people, and it causes them to leave and disappear, and, you hurt others, and you'll never be forgiven. You have to live with that life of regret. That's the metaphor that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. What's wrong with that metaphor? What's wrong with you basically having one horror movie that shows these monstrous creatures of another dimension, of a hellscape, that pray to a completely different god? That is a very mean god. He has a twisted sense of humor. Yeah. He'll give you your gifts if you get to him, but not the way you want them.
He's very monkey paw. Like, he's very...
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's a monkey paw situation. You do all this stuff to get what, your boon with the god of Leviathan, the god of power and flesh.
Yeah.
And... alright, cool, you got your boon, but here's the downside to the gift I just gave you.
Did you...
And it's just like addiction. It is just like addiction.
Yeah.
You get the high, you get the ultimate feeling, and then you have to deal with the negative side of, like, oh, your family comes crashing down, you lost your job, you wrecked a car, you might have hurt someone physically.
Your brother's tired of your shit.
Yeah!
I think, I want to ask you, this might just be me stretching the premise too far, but right at the end, when and we're gonna go through the plot like just as in order, but right at the end, when the boons are being laid out and they all started with L, did you kind of think of the Endless and how all of their names start with D?
I did.
I was like, do you want the Lazarus or the Leviathan or the
or the Lament?
Yeah, and I was like, that for me. I liked it. I like alliteration. I'm a big fan of when you start a bunch of things with the same letter. And that came from the Batman 60s TV show where everything was like, will the daring duo destroy the dastardly dealings of Dr. Death? It's like, I'm a sucker for a lot of alliteration. So I like that it wasn't like, what do you want? Do you want to get laid? Do you want someone brought back? Like, it's just one word for each boon, and it starts with an L, and it means something. Leviathan means power. Lazarus, of course, means bringing someone back from the dead. Like, lament means, well, you kind of regretted opening this thing, so you're just going to shut it without getting a boon at all.
Primordial is sensation.
Yeah.
And that's the...
Which apparently makes you Clockwork Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, worst sensation gift
But before we get too much further ahead of ourselves, alright, I want to start from the beginning.
You're steering the ship, because you are the ship.
Parallel comparison
to
what it started as in 1987 to what it is now.
Alright.
So, There's also a good change in the mythos. I consider it a good change because, alright, in 1987's version, the movie starts with a off-screen shotman asking, "What's your pleasure, mister?" And it cuts to Frank Cotton, Uncle Frank.
Yep.
Good old Uncle Frank, obtaining the Lament Configuration, Lemshard puzzle box. There's a couple different names for it.
Let's just call it the puzzle box.
Yeah.
That's the one the layman's.
Everyone just winds up calling it the puzzle box.
Yeah.
They don't actually use it, but for the sake of accuracy, I want to make sure I say both names.
Yeah.
The Lemshard Configuration,
Wait.
the French box maker who made it in the original mythos.
You don't think that the internet's gonna question your credentials, do you? That's not how the internet works. They're not gonna.
No,
they're not gonna drag you for the smallest mistake.
Oh, exactly.
You're confusing the internet.
He pronounced it wrong.
Yeah.
He can't be a real fan. He didn't mention it. Yeah. Anyways,
spend a couple semesters in France, loser.
Frank obtains the box.
Mm-hmm.
He gets back to his home and is dwelling in the attic, basically trying to solve this puzzle box. And the thing about the original puzzle box is that it always eventually opens up for the caller, the person who wants it to be open.
Yeah.
And Frank is the person who opens it.
You just gotta want it bad enough.
If you open the box, it is automatically attached to you. That there's no question. Like it doesn't
need blood. Like
it doesn't need someone else's. It needs your blood.
Okay.
It doesn't give you the option. They don't barter, except for the one instance in Hellraiser because there was a mistaken identity. So Frank is ripped to pieces in the opening credits of the original 1987 version. Yeah. He got what he wanted. He found the ultimate pleasure. He found the Cenobites and their fucking hellscape in the world of Leviathan. Right. He's torn to pieces. His brother and his new wife and his niece, Christy Cotton, are moving in. And, the original premise, it winds up being where the wife of his brother had an affair with him back in the day. Yeah. And she still has this weird feeling of attachment to Frank. Yeah. She winds up finding the bloody mess in the attic. Yeah. And when she touches it, it kind of keeps her connected to Frank. Then his brother drops blood into the mess, and it starts bringing Frank back. Yeah. He escaping the Cenobites causes the entire plot drive of the first movie. Mm-hmm. That is the plot drive, because the box lost what it was owed, his flesh. Yeah. So, later on in the movie, when his niece winds up finding out that he is actually, taken her dad's skin, has killed a bunch of people in the attic, and now she has a box, and she's accidentally opened it, the Cenobites are going after her, but she's like, wait, it's not me that you want. You're not coming here for me. Frank escaped you. And they're like, no, that's not possible. Okay, cool, we'll make a deal with you. You bring us Frank, we'll let you live. We won't tear your soul apart. Maybe. Mm-hmm. So even then, it's never guaranteed. Right. That was the mythos of the original one. In this new one, you have the opening scene where
Roland and the very pretty boy.
Yes, Roland and the very pretty sex trafficker boy.
I wrote a note here that's like, I never get invited into the back room at parties. I'm just not pretty enough.
So, this lovely lady lures a young, attractive male prostitute to a back room of a rich person's sex den. Yeah. And in this sex den, there are different boxes of configuration. So that means that there are more than one in this universe. Just like there was in the original. Good for continuity.
Yeah, when I first saw the one that he was working on and it was already opened, I thought that was the starting shape, and I was like, why did you guys make it look like a dildo? Why is it phallic now? But then
phallic images will always show up in Hellraiser.
No kidding.
It's just like H.R. Geiger. You can trust that Clive Barker will have sexualized stuff just like H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, but luckily, that was just it further down the line, and I didn't realize that. But yeah, that poor dude, his only crime was being beautiful.
Yeah, but that's the thing alright, that's the part that I'm okay with in this remake. Mm-hmm. They changed the mythos just a little bit. So, what's more dastardly than a monstrous villain from hell? A billionaire with a lot of fucking money who will get away with everything. That's
working with monstrous villains from hell.
So, enter your main villain. Roland. Aside from the plot of the Cenobites, you have the rich billionaire Vought. Vought?
Roland Vought, right?
Yeah, they just call him Vought the whole time.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to be calling him Roland because that's why when they first introduced him, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget.
So Vought basically is watching this young man be enthralled with the box. Because the box always calls to people's temptations. People who are broken in some way. People who have dark, deep desires, that are of the sadistic, or the masochistic, or the, existential and ethereal. That's what they prey on. Yeah. They try to find new forms of ecstasy for you, whatever it caters to your pleasure. Hence the question, what's your pleasure, mister? And this boy, while Vought just watches him, he knows what's going to happen. Because in order for this box to be where it's at, he had to have already sacrificed several other people.
Right. He needs one more.
Yep. It's in the final stage. And that's what we don't understand until the very end of this movie.
Yeah.
Is why he's doing it. So, all you see is this young man gets stabbed in the hand with the blood. Blood dripping out of his hand, just oozing out, and it's starting to be sucked out.
Those hand wounds, because you see 8 through the course of this movie, they all look good. Yeah. Very well. Like, the gore in this film, and I'm not a dude who's super into gore, that's not where my horror loves lie, but the gore in this movie is top notch.
It's in my name.
It made me squeamy. Well, I know you love it. It made me squeamy a little. A little squeamish a couple times.
I mean,
but not from the big stuff. Hooks ripping people apart, I wasn't there. But the big gashes across the hand, the realistic ones. Yeah, they got to me.
Something that looks like it could happen to you. That definitely gets to you.
Yeah.
But, so as this young man is starting to have his blood drained out from him by the box, it's seeping into the box, all of a sudden, the box opens. And all you see is these hooks shoot out, classic vintage Barker style. Yep. Just shooting out of the darkness, plunging into this young man's arms and his shoulder and his leg.
Putting him in a nice crucified type, but with his legs akimbo type thing in the air. Because, man, Clive Barker, he loves the spread eagle floating in the air. He's a big fan.
And very tastefully, you don't see him be ripped apart on camera.
Yeah.
You notice they actually pan away. They pan away and you just hear the tearing and the crunching and the sound of sinew.
Another thing I made a note of, the Foley, all the sound effects in this are so fucking... And I don't just mean the gory, gooey bits, but every time the puzzle box clicks, it is a sound that resonates with me that just feels so good. I'm like, oh yeah, click, click, click.
It really does. It sounds like you're unlocking a secret chest.
Yeah, it feels good.
It's like the click that you hear in a pirate fantasy movie when they're like, all right, we've got the key. Is it going to turn? Yeah. Click.
Yeah.
Oh, we did it.
And the Foley work in this was great. Fantastic.
So tastefully done for the opening scene where, yes, we saw a lot of blood coming out of his hand, a lot of it being, basically forcibly drained out, being sucked out. Because that's what they're after. They're after your flesh and blood. And so this young man, he was the final sacrifice, and Voight basically looks up, his whole little sex room starts shifting, changing the walls, and making a configuration in its own right.
Yeah.
Next thing you know,
there's
you see a blinding light above the skylight.
Yeah, and he looks up and he does this yell. He's like, hey!
Give me my boom!
Give me the boom, baby! And then kind of a fade to black. We don't know what happens with that. Now we're suddenly hanging out with some people fucking.
Yeah, and again, in what other better typical fashion of Clive Barker than to cut away from a, sad, gory scene to, let's just have two people fucking.
Yeah.
And enter our main protagonist in Riley.
And Trevor.
And I got some things to say about Trevor, but we're gonna...
Douche!
Yeah.
That's a fucking douche! By the way, I wrote... the first note I wrote about Trevor, and which was also about Matt, was Matt is right. Her boyfriend Trevor seems like a manipulative jerk. And this was before I knew anything else that happens in the movie. And spoilers ahead, that dude's a manipulative jerk even more so than you see at the beginning.
True. But at the same time, he got lost in the sauce because when they were fucking, he slipped up and he said, I love you to her. And that completely turned her off and shut her down.
Yeah.
And so then you get the backstory of why is she so weird? I thought they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Nope. You come to find out and learn that Trevor is actually the guy she met in AA. They are both addicts, and they're supposed to be getting sober. Yeah. And one of the biggest rules of AA
just don't fuck around with anybody else in AA.
Yeah. Any type of recovery center will tell you that. And 9 out of 10 times, how many times was that listened to? Yeah. Never.
No. Well, I mean...
Yeah, one person who's like, I won't do it, and then everyone else is like, oh, we've been fucking.
Yeah, and the person that says I won't do it is usually a person nobody wants to fuck anyway, and that's why you won't do it.
And to be fair, I think that her brother and her friends and her brother's boyfriend, all really sweet couple, by the way. Really
Matt and Colin.
They remind me of my real life friend Jose and Adam.
Yep.
And Matt and Adam, they just wanted to look out for her. They do love her.
I wrote this. I wrote, 10 years makes a difference. Because 10 years ago, I probably would have sided with Riley as like, don't be a square, Matt. And now 10 years later, I'm an old man and I'm like, yeah, keep the fucking noise down and stop the drugs, woman. You can't handle it. Cut that shit out. So like,
it's like there's 3 other people that live here and you're just fucking like, there's nobody here.
I've aged to the point where I've switched teams. I am definitely team Matt and Colin, not team Riley and Trevor. But I think 10 years ago I would have been on the other side.
And it's funny because
10 years ago I would have been dating Riley and leading her down bad roads.
Exactly. I was just like,
I'm a better person now.
When I watched this, I don't mean to crap on you, but I was like, I could see that being Reno. Mm-hmm. That could be a Reno shtick.
Hopefully the Reno of the past, but tonight she's still young, so we'll see.
I mean, I have known you for 10 years, so
you knew me back when.
Yeah, that's crazy that we've known each other for a decade. It just flew by. It's like I barely know you.
The tears are real.
But back to the main part.
Yeah, she comes out. Oh, you heard us fucking? They're like, yeah. How could we not have? Like, you weren't even trying to not be.
By the way, the spaghetti's ready.
No. Tapas.
Sorry.
Those cute little Spanish dishes.
Sorry.
So it was, I only bring it up because it's such a petite little meal. Yeah. And it's the perfect, counter to that loud, angry fucking that was happening in the other room. It might as well have came out and been offered, a little quiche. Here's a little quiche.
And then, of course, she's like, all right, fine, I'll stop seeing him. Yeah. What do we cut to next?
Trevor offering her a gig. And pretending like he's not, doing the whole I don't think I should say this to you. And of course, she's a fucking former addict. Come on. And so, he's like, okay, well, I have this gig. That fucker.
Yeah, just oh, I need some money. I gotta pay rent. And, I'm not looking for a job. The typical story of a lot of addicts that we've known throughout our lives. Yeah. And that's fine. Everyone is struggling to fucking get money and pay your bills. Yeah. But this manipulative fuckhead Trevor is like, so what? You're not gonna listen to him? Okay, fine. Just move in here with me. If you want to help me make some money, I got this gig coming up.
Yeah. Now your brother wouldn't like it. He knows the buttons to push. You want to be a good girl, don't you? God, what a wussy good girl.
What would your parents think?
Yeah, God, what an asshole.
That's alright. And so,
and of course she's in.
Wannabe Sid and Nancy, wannabe Bonnie and Clyde-esque people.
Some place where he used to do security. There's a shipping container still there. He's got the key code to get inside, and he's like, they never came back for it. It's been sitting there for a month or something. We need to go in and pop that shit and steal whatever's in there.
And they open it, and what do they find? They find a safe, and she's like, you got the combination? He's like, I didn't even fucking know it was a safe in here.
That's what I was saying. I was like, that's kind of a dumb question. And he said he didn't know what was in this thing. It would have been really weird if he suddenly did.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, what do we do? He's like, I don't know, I'm just going to lay here and wait for you to do the thing. So she spends, let's say, at least in movie time, almost an hour trying to bust
swinging the sledgehammer into this safe.
And finally, she's like, fuck it. And she pops with the crowbar, just pops the damn thing off. I'm like, why didn't she do that from the get-go?
Yeah.
But
maybe she weakened it the sledgehammer, which is not how real safes work, but that's okay.
The realism, whatever. However realistic it was, doesn't matter, because at the end result, they pop it open, and inside of the vault,
an IOU.
It's a box. It's another box. No, it's a wooden box. Mm. They grab the wooden box, and they're like, oh shit, I think somebody's coming. We need to leave. The guy
even says, boxes within boxes. No, they do reveal the puzzle box, because he gives it, he's like, oh, you want to hold on to this?
Oh, I thought that was back at their apartment.
No, it's before they get out of there. But they do have to.
I can't do nothing. Just here, you want to hold on to it so I can find someone to junk it?
A wink, wink.
Yeah, he knew what he was fucking doing.
That motherfucker.
So, Riley's like, sure. Obviously, she's enamored with it. She touches it, and she feels the call of the box. She feels what every person with issues feels when they touch that box. She feels this long sense of calling and a little bit of a peace when she's trying to solve it.
And isn't that nice? Who doesn't want a little bit of peace? So, Oh, also she was drinking on this gig, so she comes back home a little tipsy and makes some racket
and can't get her shoes off at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and Matt comes storming out of his room with the whole like, "Where were you? Why are you drunk? Did you get high? Did you do anything else? Did you get high? Did you take pills? Blah blah blah." And long story short, they get in a heated debate, and he gives her the boot. He's like, "You can't stay here anymore." Like,
yeah, because every person has had some type of interaction or known someone that has had the interaction with an addict that they love, but they just can't.
You have got to look. Yeah, like,
you can't let them keep doing this to you. So you have to stand your ground for the sake of your
own health.
Yeah, like I love you, but I have to look out for me right now. Even though you're in a tough spot, your tough spot is making my life hell.
Well, yeah, and he also said, "I can't keep covering for you." So this is also a case of like, the room you are in, I need someone in there that's paying rent, or we're all going to be homeless.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
So
definitely been there before.
This is where the spiral of the plot finally starts picking up, and I really enjoyed it. Like the scenery, the visuals, the music.
We have the playground and that cool aerial shot while she's fucking with the. Oh, and she does. I'm sorry. We should mention briefly that she does succumb and take a couple of pills.
We're never sure what pill she takes. We just know instead of sleeping in the trunk of the back of her car like she planned, she gets out and decides to have another swig of alcohol, and then she opens up a silver container with several white pills in it. You never see exactly what kind, but they fuck her up pretty bad.
Yeah.
She takes the pills and throws them on the ground. We're like, oh, finally. She's not going to do it. She's just going to stay getting drunk. It's not much better, but it's better than the pills. No.
Yeah, I was so happy for her that moment. Unfortunately, it didn't last.
And then she hears her brother in her head, basically, it's just
ragging on her.
Eating at her, and she's like, fuck it, I'm going to take the pills.
Yeah.
And now she's doing the cross-drunk thing where she's got pills in her system, she's got alcohol in her system.
And she's sitting in an abandoned kiddie park, because it's like 2 a.m. probably, and she's fucking around with this little box.
And I love that they use original scores from the 1987, but they, up the ante of the quality of it. It's not something that you may have noticed because you didn't intently watch the movies, but the score that was well known for Hellraiser, its original score, they brought it back for this movie. And there were several times where things are happening when the Cenobites are about to show up or when the puzzle's being worked on. It's that same symphony from the original that's been brought back. Nice. And I found such a deep appreciation for it, especially when you're on that overview where she's sitting on the carousel and she's just spinning and it's starting to play the violin sounds when she's working on it, and then when it clicks, it just goes silent. That's very, very well done, Clive Barker. And of course, it doesn't get her. When you solve the box, a hook or a spear of some kind will pop out and try and
get that blood.
And because she was so fucked up and her hands were in an awkward placement, it missed her hand completely. But she saw the blade. And when she saw the blade, she started feeling woozy.
She was like, what the fuck?
And passed out. And she starts hallucinating in her mind. She thinks she's hallucinating seeing, the Cenobites.
Yeah.
And so the Cenobites basically come to her and tell her, we didn't get you. You owe us flesh. Give us somebody. And if you don't, we'll come for you.
This is a very unfair arrangement.
Yeah. Let me just say. The thing is it's like, but your blade didn't cut me, so turnabout's fair play, right? Yeah. No. She was just like, huh? And it turns out that her brother, this is something that was a little confusing to me, and it made me think maybe they are connected in a twins aspect or something, because he was asleep, and he basically had this nightmare of seeing the Cenobite. What was happening to Riley, he could see in his dream, and it woke him up out of his nightmare, and that's what spurred him to go try and find his sister.
Well, it also explains why he knew where to look for her when he woke up.
That's why I was a little bit confused, how did he know where to find her?
I think you're right. I think it was kind of the dream magic of they're twins, and so he had this bad trip. And it's also the Cenobite put it in her head, I'm gonna get your brother. And I don't know how much that was the Cenobites manipulating her into getting her brother there so they could get his blood.
Because that's what a lot of this movie was. A lot of this movies was her being manipulated into these scenarios.
Yeah.
She was trying to do something, but she didn't realize until it was too late that that's what they wanted her to do.
Yeah.
And so when her brother finally comes and finds her, she's almost overdosing in the middle of the park. And so he tries to drag her to the bathroom, and he can't drag her to the bathroom to try and get water down her throat, or the water fountain, and he cuts his hand on the configuration puzzle.
Right. Because who expects the little gold box to have blades on it? Not I said that.
Because he goes to try and take it from her when he's trying to save her.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the fuck is this? Grabs it and just cuts himself blindly.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, fuck, and he tosses the box somewhere.
Yeah.
And so... I
kind of thought it would have been very funny if the box had been left there and some kid finds it the next morning, like going on the swing set, like, oh, what's this?
I thought about that too. I was like, that's a little bit too dark.
And apparently Barker agreed with you because that's not the way it went.
Yeah, but
I on the other hand was like, oh yeah, get some kids.
This one aspect, I noticed it, and I didn't really pay attention to the first time it happened to the guy, the young male escort at the opening credits.
Okay.
I didn't pay attention, but once it happened to her brother, when it happened to Matt, I was just like, I noticed that the cut has almost a poison-like effect on the people, where once it cuts them, it kind of possesses them. Like, they don't have real control of their body, their soul starts to feel that tug.
It seems like it puts them in between. Like, later on, when the, really cute Asian girl, R.I.P. cute Asian girl, gets cut, and she's in the van, and the van just starts stretching.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it kind of seems like it, when you
Her
get
name is
cut...
Nora, by the way.
Nora. I love you, Nora. And when they get cut, it kind of seems like the veil between this world and the Cenobites world becomes very thin, and they can, like, get in and start poking you.
Yep.
Start fucking with you.
And that's where we get our first real fucked up, victim, case of a victim on Riley's part, because she starts unlocking the box inadvertently.
Yeah.
So her brother's the first sacrifice, and she didn't mean to.
Yeah.
But it's what happened. He tried to come and save her, and he wound up being a casualty of once again, her addiction.
Sorry, Matt.
And he goes in the bathroom and he starts trying to clean himself up, but he's feeling that weird woozy pulsation, and no matter how much he tries to get the blood to stop, the blood just keeps sucking out of his hand.
Yeah.
It's like flowing towards something.
Yeah.
And when he turns around, he sees the stall opens up into the large hallway. Classic Barker style. I love it. When walls just start pulling back and shifting, and an unknown light source comes out of that shadowy wall.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see glowing light between the bricks of the building. I love it. I love that aesthetic. It's so perfect for, the classic Hellraiser theme.
Yeah.
And if anybody disagrees, they're not actual fans of the original.
Yeah.
Hell, even if you never watched the original, but you like his writings, if you go look back at how Clive Barker describes the Cenobites in writings, completely different than the actual movie. Mm-hmm. He describes them as more like angelic alien-looking figures with high-pitched voices that are caught between a high and a low.
Yeah.
Like overlapping voices and stuff. And they weren't even called the Cenobites. They were called the Order of the Gash. So, again, that's another tangent I could get off on about people who have complaints about this.
Right.
But, so Matt unfortunately gets sacrificed. And again, I don't believe, if I recall, you don't see him get torn apart.
No. You just hear him screaming from the bathroom. You cut to her outside, and she hears him screaming, then she goes in, and the only blood's on the sink.
Yep.
Which is why she calls the police, and they aren't willing to do anything, because he hasn't been gone 24 hours, and there's nothing but a small splatter of blood that technically could belong to anyone on the sink. And they also think she's high, and drunk, which she is both.
That is a big part.
For all of those reasons, they aren't willing to look for this guy.
What was Matt's boyfriend's name again?
Colin.
Alright, so they get her home, and Colin and Nora are just like, what the fuck is going on? Where is Matt? The cops are telling us this, but, we need to ask you, how fucking high are you? How drunk are you?
Yeah.
How messed up are you? Where is he? What did you...
Did you see him? Did you lose him? Like, what happened? And she, I would dare say, makes the mistake of explaining. She would have almost been better off saying, I don't know, I didn't see him.
Yeah.
than telling the story she told.
I saw some mutilated woman in the park. And they're like, okay, you saw a woman. What'd she look like? And then when you describe what she looked like, they're like, what?
It ends with Colin furious, because Colin, as she was leaving, told her not to go. And he's kind of... And this is a natural reaction. I don't blame Colin for this. I like Colin. But he's blaming her for Matt being gone. Because, he told her not to leave. She left. Matt went after her. Now Matt's gone. She's back. And Colin's like, I feel like this is your fault. To the point where she storms out. And goes to visit Trevor, her
Yeah,
on again,
I was
off
like,
again.
once again, back into the arms of that manipulative asshole known as Trevor.
Yeah, but they do a little bit of she does a little bit of research while he sleeps on the couch, and they discover the lady that is managing the property,
Anissa,
is in a asylum in a hospital nearby. Not an asylum, just a hospital.
I was going to say, it was like whenever they pulled up to the hospital, I thought it was an old folks' home.
Yeah.
But I was like, but she wasn't that old at the beginning.
While they're walking through, Trevor says something like, "Oh, it smells like crazy in here," or something like that. So I thought it was it might be a home for the elderly that have like mental problems that are a danger like to themselves or other.
Okay.
Yeah. I keep wanting to say cerebral palsy. That's not what I'm looking for.
Alzheimer's?
Yeah. That's the one I was looking for. But yeah, so they go, and it's the lady from the beginning who told the pretty prostitute boy where to go and find his fate.
And then, mind you, in the very beginning, she was smoking cigarettes, too. So when she was luring these young men, her thing was smoking cigarettes and smoking a brandy.
Yeah.
Smoking cigarettes and drinking a brandy.
She was
smoking a brandy!
Drinking a cigarette.
Yeah, drinking a cigarette and smoking a brandy. That's a new phrase.
And she ended up, apparently it did not help her lungs out much. So now she's on oxygen. And this is part the way it's filmed and part the Foley work again. But her with her oxygen mask on made me feel extremely claustrophobic.
It was
especially when
suffocating asphyxiation sound
because you heard her breath, and when things start changing and she starts hyperventilating because she's scared. Oh man, I was getting claustrophobic because it was done so well. Like it made me short of breath watching her be short of breath. Like, that lady.
And all this stemmed from her asking the question of, like, why was this box inside the crate? Trevor's like, I don't know, man. I just worked for Voight for a short period of time. I don't know. I was just a handler for security. And all this is, like, just him sitting in the sidelines, knowing what's happening in the background, but just continues to let her play Nancy Drew. Yeah. So she keeps going further and further and further and further and further.
Yeah.
And he is so complicit in the taking of certain lives that it's just...
Oh, yeah.
If I was a judge, I'd be like, you are so guilty.
He was leading her down this road. Yeah, well, spoiler ahead. We find out that he's working for Roland. Has been.
I wasn't going to get there yet, but...
Well, I figure... I mean, if you're listening to this, we're covering the whole movie, so we're going to get there. And,
But that was the part of the reason I was getting to is that he knew Anissa. He knew the whole thing that was going on with her and how she had a breakdown after what happened with, Voight getting his boon and her basically being like, I'm out of a fucking job. Now my health has gone down south.
I wanted to ask you, because she says, she tries to take it from Riley and is like, I'm just going to close it back up. I'm going to do you this favor. You let me take the puzzle box and I'm going to close it and end this. Can she do that? Could she have done that?
I think she was so arrogant in thinking that she actually could control the configuration box and wouldn't just blindly accidentally unlock another chamber. Yeah. Instead, she would revert it.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that the only way to convert it back to its original form is to get it to its final form.
Right.
That's the problem. So that was just her arrogance. That was her thinking that she knew better than Riley, and that her fear got the better of her. That's my opinion. That's the way that it came off. That's.
I was just curious. It seemed unlikely because if you could, why wouldn't people? Like, as soon as you realized that the Cenobites were bad news, why wouldn't you just shut the box up again?
The only people that have absolute knowledge of the configuration box's workings
the guy that made it.
Yeah, are the creator, I guess he doesn't exist in this universe because they don't use his name, but the Cenobites and the Hell Priest especially. The Hell Priestess is the main one who, of all the Cenobites, has control of how to undo the configuration. The Hell Priestess is the, overseer of the Cenobite Order. So, to think that she would have some type of ability to do
Probably
what,
not.
The lead Cenobite does, it's arrogant. It's arrogance.
Yeah.
And it was just her fear getting the better of her, and look what happens.
In the struggle,
she gets a nice little slice.
And, of course, the hospital turns into a nightmare zone, and, Which I love, that was a very scary bit. That whole hospital scene, I wish they'd done a little more with it. I would have liked to have stayed in that. Because there were a couple really good set pieces, but then it was just Cenobites walking down dark hallways. And I was like, come on, you got a scary hospital. Give me more, like, torture hospital stuff. You gave me a little. Give me more. Like, so I guess all I'm saying is I wish that scene had been longer because it was such a good set piece.
And that was the thing is, like, you finally start getting deeper and deeper looks at the Cenobites in that one hospital scene.
Yeah.
Like, in that hospital scene, they had what?
Chatterbox or whatever his name is.
The Chatterer, the tall Chatterer.
Okay.
And then they had the Asian woman who basically was, like, had her thing and she was gasping for air the whole time.
Yeah. They had the one with the nun's habit, but it was made from her own skin.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, same one. Okay, yeah. And then, of course, Pinhead. And I feel like the other one was there.
The one that's, like, with the stretched face.
Yeah, nothing behind it.
Yeah.
He was my favorite.
Yeah, that one was
He only gets one line, but he was my he says, we're already here at one point. That's his only line, but he was my favorite.
I loved...
I like the Cenobite. Maybe now is when we should talk about the Cenobite redos.
So, the Cenobite redos,
I like them.
When you get introduced to seeing more of the characters aside from the Hell Priestess, you see a very, very different looking aesthetic. So in 1987's version, leather was in.
Yeah.
Leather and a little bit of gory skin blood prosthetics were in. You had the original Pinhead, Doug Bradley, you had the Chatterer, you had his female counterpart, the Gash, and then you had Butterball, which was the fat one with
Stevie
glasses. Wonder glasses,
I love
with
Butterball.
the giant butt teeth,
yeah,
and a giant round exploding belly.
Yeah, good old Butterball.
They were all decked in leather with butcher's aprons and different collections of knives, and you know, just looked horrible. Now, in the new one, they have taken we wear our own leather to a new extreme. And what I mean by that is that the Hell Priestess, her garb, her priest wardrobe, it looks like a robe. It looks like a long flailing robe dress. Is actually just the severed excess of her skin from her hands and her chest and her body downwards that have been flapped over to show the flayed side, which makes these almost clothing-like looking aesthetics.
Yeah.
So imagine looking at your hand and then degloving your hand on both sides and just having both sides of it hang down like it's the long sleeve of a shirt. That's essentially what she had, and that's what several of the others had.
Yeah.
You have the new version of Chatterer, who was played by a 6'9" guy, young gentleman that everyone loved working with. He's much taller than the original.
Yeah.
His is basically, you know, his skin has been pulled back, he's been inverted, and all of his skin is gray and mushy looking, and it basically looks like Rod.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool looking. Almost has a xenomorph look to it.
Yeah.
Now, the one that I really liked, you don't see until a little bit later, but it was the one played by a Nigerian model who was also very tall. She's got black eyes, her teeth, and then she basically separates her arms and all these pins come out.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Wasn't so much of a
fan.
She
didn't get a lot of...
She had one big mutilation.
Yeah.
She had that giant pin come out and she was stabbing him.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Wasn't a fan of the vagina monster one. Just like that one actually came from the graphic novel that I let you borrow.
Oh, nice.
Vagina Dentata.
Yeah.
That one came from that. And I didn't think that Clive Barker would actually ever put it into cinema, but he did.
It was like, God.
And
the people have been clamoring for it. They gotta have it.
I don't know what people have been clamoring for it, but I'm not one of them.
Clive Barker. The people named Clive Barker have been clamoring for it.
So, the look of the Cenobites are much gruesomer, much more darker, more of a modern, gross-out aesthetic.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm totally cool with it. Jamie Clayton sat there like a trooper for hours, along with all the other actors and actresses that, you know, had to get those prosthetics put on.
Yeah.
That was prosthetics. There was only a little bit of CGI, but it was the kind of CGI where you couldn't really tell until you were told. Everything else was 100%, you know, practical effects and prosthetics. Anybody that is an actor or actress that can sit there and handle that grueling process and make a movie like this of this quality,
champs.
They deserve their flowers.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear anybody say otherwise, because what, you like Paranormal Activity where you don't see a single fucking monster, you just have implied horror where people are pulling strings off camera?
Well, some people do, and that's fine if you do, but I can't, you shouldn't come to the Hellraiser franchise expecting that. That's not what they do. That's never been what they do. And if you're coming in and expecting that, it's like coming to watch the movie The Blob and expecting a slasher flick. Like, you're gonna be you're the problem.
Yeah.
If you're coming into this and expecting that. Like, they're night and day. Different genre, different type.
You know what was extremely letting down? I went into watching Halloween Ends thinking I was going to watch a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
And what I saw was not a Halloween movie. But that's another issue.
We'll talk about that one day. We will eventually cover every horror movie that's ever been made.
Halloween Ends can stay ended.
Yeah, once a month, we'll be done in a couple centuries. As long as they don't make any more horror movies. They got to stop making them until we catch up. To move ahead just a little bit, who do you hire to build a cage around a whole house?
You know, I thought about that. When I saw that, when they finally get past the point of, alright, well, Anissa's dead, we need to get the fuck out of here.
They end up at Roland's Casa del Sexy time.
Yeah, and you notice that there's a new cage. A giant cage with these intricate pattern designs around the entire mansion.
Yeah. And at first I thought it was just like a weird aesthetic where the house got condemned and they put a cage on it so
I was like, man,
it.
foreclosure's gone to a new steep elevation.
You find out later that's not the case, but yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. And I also, and this ended up being, again, foreshadowing, like I guessed this and it turned out to be exactly where they were going. But yeah, it looked like a house version of the puzzle box. Like the box around the house made the house look like a big puzzle box.
Fun fact, from the franchise, the house being a giant configuration box itself is
from 13 Ghosts.
No, it's a reference inspired to the fourth Hellraiser movie, Hellraiser Bloodline. That's Hellraiser in space for you, pal.
Oh.
That's the one where they make a giant configuration box out of a space station.
Yeah, you do.
And they try and trap Hellraiser's mythos in there with all the Cenobites, including Pinhead himself, and blow the fucker up in space. I don't know how they thought that was going to play out, but that's where the entire, hey, we're going to make a configuration puzzle box out of a mansion. That inspiration came from the fourth movie.
Nice. It felt 13 Ghosts to me.
It did.
I got a lot of 13 Ghosts vibes from it, in a good way. I love that movie. So I got a lot of 13 Ghosts vibes from it. I was like, yeah, alright.
It was just funny because when I saw that, I was like, oh, we're doing this trope again. Yeah. Knowing that they had done it in Bloodline.
Yeah.
And I was like, it didn't really work for you guys then. Maybe
they're doing it better
cooler.
Here. Yeah.
Because if they did do the 13 Ghosts aesthetic, in which
it also didn't work really.
Yeah, it didn't really work out, but in the movie that we watched, it worked out okay.
Yeah.
Not great, but okay.
Now comes, in my opinion, the funniest exchange in the entire movie. There's a scene where Colin and Riley are down in one of the basement rooms, and Colin's like, "What is this?" And Riley says, "I think it's a fuck dungeon." And then Colin says, "Do you want to tell me what this is about?" And he was talking about everything that had happened up to that point. But I busted out laughing because I thought he was asking at first about, what's a sex dungeon all about? He's like, what's all this about? And I really expected her to just be like, well, you see those whips over there you usually use on the backside of the posterior. That mask it kind of heightens your senses that aren't covered up by it. And that over there, I thought she was going to start giving him a sex ed.
There's a small part that we skipped over before Nora and Colin showed up.
Yeah.
Riley went there by herself.
Yeah.
She went there without Trevor, without anybody. And Trevor went and got Nora and Colin, be like, hey, I think Riley's in trouble, guys.
Yeah.
Where do you think she went? I have an idea.
It seemed weird when they showed up.
Yeah.
But then when you find out why...
And so, while Riley's there by herself, she starts seeing more hallucinations of the Hell Priestess, basically explaining to her what is coming next.
And what she can get from it. This is the first time that she brings up the boon. Hey, all this killing actually has a purpose. You can bring your brother back. I know you like your brother. I know him and you are big.
And that's where the Hell Priestess tries to do her best to sway her into basically willingly giving herself up.
Yeah. Or giving her someone in her place.
Yeah.
It's it's either you or you get to pick somebody. And
again, that's a lot different than the original continuity, and I know people are fucking groaning and griping about that, but me, I love this franchise. I really do. And I know it's not without its problems, but this is something I'm okay with changing because it makes your villain a little bit more accessible to be a villain.
Yeah.
It makes your villain straight up be scarier because they're like, hey, I'm just playing nice. I'm giving you a choice.
Yeah.
And then it makes, and
it's also,
the person
makes more sense because the Cenobites get you regardless.
Yep.
So if you open it, and it stabs you, and then it kills you, then it's just a box laying in the floor. But if you start working for it, you can get it. You can get it 5 more victims. Yeah, so it makes a lot more sense than the original idea. And I'm a big fan, even if it did result in the death of the pretty Asian lady.
And so
my heart did break.
That's when she's getting this proposition, and she's like, go away. That's when they show up and they're like, hey, we're here. How the hell did you guys find me?
Yeah. Oh, well, Trevor.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, I think that, they were doing something here. And so you're thinking that it's like a larger plot, that it's multiple people, it's an association, it's an organization.
Right.
And you're at Voight's home the whole time. And so she's going through, looking at the different places, and they split up, a la Scooby-Doo style.
Yep.
Never split up.
At
and
least
then we get the hilarious interaction with Colin and Riley explaining, what the fuck is this all about?
Yeah, what's this fuck dungeon about?
And so Nora and Trevor are over there at the bar putting on music. Why would you want to put on music in an abandoned...
No, it was accidental. Nora's like hitting random buttons.
Oh,
and one of the buttons like starts the music
up
while Trevor's looking for alcohol.
And then she hits a button that opens a secret passageway door. And what is her first thought? Her first thought is, I'm going to go in the passageway.
Aren't we looking for clues?
And so she walks in the passageway while no one else is around.
Yeah.
Trevor has conveniently walked off.
Yeah.
Colin and Riley are down away from the action.
Yeah.
And so she walks in the passageway. She starts walking down, and she goes, and she's looking a little bit further, trying to light with her cell phone torch. She's looking, and all of a sudden, the secret passageway just locks and shuts on its own. Classic horror movie style. You should know better not to go into a passageway without an door handle.
No. It's a bad move.
And
rookie mistake.
So she goes in, and she's like, hey, Trevor, this isn't funny. Let me out. It's not funny. And conveniently, Trevor comes back and pretends like he can't hear. And he's like, oh, what's going on? Huh?
And
Nora,
then she's
are you
like,
there?
oh, hit the button. And he just starts hitting random buttons, and like all sorts of random stuff starts happening. Like the music comes on, and like,
then
other lights and other things.
When Trevor's doing his little shtick, trying to pretend play to be confused,
I'm helping.
Nora gets stabbed in the back. You hear a heavy breathing behind her, and she gets stabbed in the back, and she's screaming in pain. And you look, and you see it's some shadowed figured man with what looks like a giant fucking harpsichord sticking out of his chest.
And my first thought was, oh, it's a different Cenobite.
Yeah.
One I haven't
met
yet.
That was my first one, too. I was like, how did Cenobite get in the fucking house?
Yeah, I was,
and then
I just assumed, like, they could follow the box around. Like, if the box was there, they could kind of sneak around. But yeah, so she comes staggering out.
She's got the box lodged in her back.
With the box in her back. And, they decide that they're going to just leave this place and get her to a hospital, which is the first smart move they made in a while.
Yeah, and conveniently, they're doing it right as the sun is setting.
Yeah.
So everything's starting to get dark real quick on this large property place where you have multiple roads to try and leave from, but not every single one of them takes you away from the house.
Right.
It's a giant maze in its own right.
Yeah.
So they're leaving. And one of the coolest scenes happens here. Nora, she's been stuck with the box. And the box is transformed once again. And they're fighting over it in the car, like, yo, we need to get rid of this. We need to get the fuck out of here. We need to take her to a hospital. Nora is feeling that sense of disorientation. She feels her soul being pulled towards the Cenobites.
I was thinking she was blessed because she didn't have to listen to this fucking fight. Like, oh my god, like, take the left road. No, it's the right road. Stop, go back.
It's like a married couple,
Yeah. And I was like, Nora, you're lucky you're not having to listen to this.
And so,
the
Nora's just like bleeding out.
Nora's like, thank God you're here.
And that's when one of the coolest scenes happens, because it shows that, even if you're in a moving vehicle, these Cenobites can still get to you no matter what.
It can still bend reality.
The trunk of the van starts stretching out into a hallway. And as they're driving, Nora's laying now what seems like on a giant, like an abandoned little alleyway.
Yeah, the
in
special
the dark.
effects, so good.
And it was really cool. I loved how they made it look like, the car kept driving and she was just staying in place.
Yeah.
And she's like, guys! Mm-hmm. And like, they can't hear her because she's forever away. She's now in their realm.
Yep.
And so when they get a hold of her, oh man. I'll let you sadly describe the way that Nora met her end.
Oh, Nora, for the first time since the beginning, for the first time, we actually get to see a Hook murder. It'd been hinted at with the prostitute at the beginning and with Matt, but unfortunately, poor Nora is on the wrong end of a Hook evisceration. Is that the right way to describe it?
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets it. But first she gets a little, she's praying, and I believe it's Pinhead comes out and pokes a little fun at her for asking for salvation. And
it's like, what is it you pray for?
Well, talking about how, like, and this is something theologians have argued forever, like, if heaven's perfect, then it's going to get boring, and it's not going to feel right. Like, if it's just one perfect tone forever, like, that's not heaven, that's monotony, that's boredom. And, Pinhead, offers an alternative of lots of different sounds, mostly your screams at all sorts of different pitches.
Yeah.
I thought she was going to break into some Bram Stoker's Dracula, like, oh, my children of the night, what music they make.
No,
it was a very good metaphor.
I loved, some of the callbacks to the original franchise. I don't believe it was from the original first one. I think it might have been from the second or third movie.
Okay.
But when she says, do you think your God hears you? What is salvation if not this?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then, of course, the excellent is like, oh, no tears. It's a perfectly good waste of suffering.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate line is like, we have such sights to show you.
Yeah, that's the famous.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
And
it does put a weird light on this Cinnabite, because it almost seems like they're trying to do you a favor.
They think they're doing you a favor.
Well, they mention it later too when they have the house surrounded. They're like, we're not bad people. Like, we offer salvation. We're giving them so much sensation.
So what's cool about this scene is when you see all the different Cenobites coming into the foreground of it, you see, I don't know if you caught this, but you actually see Anissa is now a Cenobite.
I did not see that.
The Cenobite that walks up that's being, like, suffocated, that has, like, a flap over its face.
The one that gets in the house?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's got a flap over its face that's, like, suffocating and, like...
Yeah.
It first shows up when Nora's about to get murdered in the background.
Okay.
But then the tall one comes and just grabs Nora's head and fucking rips her head off.
Yeah.
Which I thought was like, that's not quite what they would do, but her head was still alive when they ripped it off, so who knows what they're going to keep doing to her.
Yeah, right. They'll probably stitch it back on backwards and make her
And then
walk.
they ripped the rest of her body to pieces, and her friends saw the very end of what happened to her because the blood splattered into the trunk. And then they were gone.
Yeah. And
they're like, what the fuck just happened? They slam on the brakes to get out, and they're like, where did she go? How do we explain this? There's just a pile of blood in the back of the van.
R.I.P. Nora.
And in the panic of not knowing how the fuck to get away from this mansion, how to get away from the Cenobites, Riley's like, well, I'll just take it and I'll run. So she grabs the box and she decides to run. She gets to some bridge.
Well, I like the idea that she's trying to save them. She's like, I'm going to get this as far away from you as possible so that one of you idiots don't cut your hand on it and become the next victim. Like, I'm trying to save my friends.
The more she tries to help, the more she makes it worse.
That is possibly accurate. But this is where she finds out that the Cenobites can also be sacrificed.
Yeah.
And that's a big realization.
That was another
That gives you a lot of power.
Yeah, that was another thing that I liked and almost didn't like to an extent for changing the mythos, because before, like, the only people that could kill a Cenobite was another Cenobite.
Yeah.
And I was like, it makes sense. You're using your own weaponry against them to kill them, but saying that they can be used as one of the sacrifices.
It feels like they got caught on the fine print of their own contract.
Yeah, it's like they're recycling. It's like, wait, doesn't he just go back to being a Cenobite? Like, if he dies, won't he just recycle?
We'll talk about that, because I want to mention that about something, but that'll be later on.
But before they get to that point in Discovery, she goes down to the bridge and she sees, the Hell Priestess floating over the lake like the lady in the water.
Yeah.
And the Hell Priestess basically makes her, like, jab her own fucking hand. That's where she's like, I'm growing impatient with you. Yeah. And she, like, snaps, and the fucking box opens and stabs Riley in her own hand.
Yeah.
And when it stabs her in her own hand, she's like, now, I'm telling you, I'm coming for you, regardless.
Yeah.
So, sacrifice 2 more people, or Your
Yeah.
ass. Your
Yeah.
ass is getting in
Yeah,
it, and we'll be
exactly.
done with it.
Yeah.
And so she is bleeding, and then all of a sudden she looks up and looks down and her hand's healed. And it's like, wait, did that really happen or didn't happen?
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a sad aspect. They start getting chased by the Cenobites again, and then we see the tall Chatterer take a big old chomp out of Trevor's arm.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, he's like, fuck it, give it to me. Stabs him. And you see the Chatterer just blow up. I was like, huh. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting him to be the one to die.
Well, I like that he backs up and gets in, like, he assumes the position because once you've been through this so much that you're a Cenobite, you love this shit. Like, all the torture is exquisite pleasure for you. So he's like, oh yeah, give it to me, Daddy.
He got
give
in
it to me,
position,
Daddy. Yeah.
and then he let himself be hooked, lined, and ripped apart.
And just into, like, there was nothing left. Like, he got hooked.
And they all get covered in blood.
Yeah.
They get covered in blood. But the funniest thing, you want to know what the funniest part about that? Is the Chatterer walked right by Colin.
Yep.
And he's just pushing the gate, and Colin's just like, no other Cenobite is fucking with him. They're all just standing there watching him, and it's only trying to get those two, because they've got the box.
Right. And I like it because it subverted your expectation, because when they're running, Colin does the stupid trip and fall thing, and you're like, oh, he trips and falls, and then it's going to kill him. Like, come on, I've seen this a million times. But then they subvert that expectation and have the Cenobite completely ignore him and keep chasing the people who you thought had gotten away because they had jumped on the other side of a fence. And you expected it to be one of this, Colin, find it, Colin. While Colin gets ripped apart and they watch from the other side of the fence.
Nope.
But instead it just knocks the fence over and like pushes them up against the wall.
And you're like, wait a minute.
And then again, they subvert your expectations again by having like, the Cenobite get stabbed and actually be one of the sacrifices to open, the box because it needs 5 in total, right? And so this is, number 3? Yeah, 3 or 4.
It has to be 7 in total.
Oh, does it have to be 7?
It's 7. Yeah, 7 people.
Okay.
That's why she needs 2 more.
My count's off. Okay. I didn't realize 5 had already gotten spadangled.
Yeah, because you have Matt, Anissa, Nora.
Yeah, it's only 3.
The Cenobite.
That's 4.
And
I thought she just needed one.
There was someone else that
more after that. Because I thought the 5th one ended up. They get back in the house, and their plan is to stab us.
Sorry, you know what? You're right. I got my number mixed up because I would watch something else that required 7.
7's the holy number.
No, there's something else that I watched just a couple nights ago that required 7 sacrifices.
Yeah, this one
needs,
needs 1 more.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, now that we know it can be Cenobites, let's try and lure 1 in here, stab it, make a wish that they, I don't know, give us $1 million and then fuck off, and then boom, done, problem solved. And they managed to, like, because the weird puzzle box complex that surrounds the house can be opened, like the gates can be opened and shut and like fucked with. Yeah.
Before you get too far ahead of yourself,
okay.
Remember, they run back to the house and they are patching up Trevor. Trevor's bleeding out from the arm.
And her, but I don't think her hand healed. I think they had to patch her because Colin's standing there patching up Trevor. And then
I'm sorry.
Like,
what happened was the blood. The blood.
Yeah,
the blood was sucked back up.
Yeah, because Colin leaves her with Trevor because he's like, I'm going to go find something for you, and she gives him the pills.
And when Trevor is on the couch resting, that's when we learn Voight is still, alive.
Roland Voight, the Clockwork Man, comes
and
out of the wall.
He has a giant instrument sticking out of his chest that has his central nerve endings wrapped around it, and it's constantly mechanically pulling on every single nerve.
Just yanking him.
Yeah, he wanted the gift of sensation for his boon from the beginning of the movie. He got it.
Yeah.
And that gift was a fucked up backwards accordion basically being lodged into your inner center body, and it has every single nerve in your body just wrapped around, pulling constantly on a mechanical. You only have like a few seconds of downtime, he said.
Yeah.
And in between those seconds, it's just agony before it starts even more pain.
Yeah.
And so,
and they do it in just such a way so that you never get used to it.
Yeah.
That was the line that really stuck with me. Like,
it's never the same.
When you have constant pain, you can get where it just becomes a kind of a background noise of your life. But yeah, if it's always twinging and changing and like modding, then you never get used to it. And so that means he hasn't slept. I doubt he's eaten. Like, he's just sat there and suffered in that house. So he confronts Trevor, and he's like, Trevor, you fucking idiot, slaps him on the head. He's like, you're supposed to be getting this box open for me. And that's when you find out that Trevor and Roland are in cahoots, because Roland is sick of this life, and he wants to open the box again and ask for a new boon.
Exactly.
Because the accordion chest boon was not as good as he thought it was going to be.
But he also thought, for some reason... He thought that only sacrificing Riley would have been good enough. When we come to see that, no, it had to be multiple people.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he thought that only her, but he thought...
His plan was to give it to her.
He thought she should be one of them, like the first or the fifth. I think he was yelling at Trevor, and again, I may be misinterpreting this, because, like, he talks funny because he's got gears in his belly. But I think he was saying to Trevor, like, she should be dead by now. This should be done.
Yeah, he did say that.
The fifth should have been... She should have been the fifth. The fifth should be dead. I should be making my wish right now. You fucked up, Trevor.
And so they make this elaborate plan where he's like, all right, no, we have a plan. We can kill the Cenobites. Everyone can live. He's like trying to be the nice guy all of a sudden, when in reality he like always planned to help kill you.
Yeah. And Roland's like, I don't care how it gets done, but it does need to be done in like the next 2 minutes, because every moment is agony.
I will kill you if we don't.
Every moment is agony, and I'm not dealing with, like, this close. I can't wait any longer. As usual, the impatience.
And so we
real
have
problem.
all the Cenobites show up outside the mansion, the house.
They're just standing there.
You know, minding the business, hanging out, being like loiterers.
Yeah.
And so Pinhead, she's just like, all right, go get him, one of you.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, no, they all start walking towards her. Like, Riley comes out to confront the Cenobite.
Yeah.
Pronouns, pal. Riley comes out to confront Pinhead. And that's when Pinhead gives her the line about like, no, we didn't kill your friends. We gave them salvation.
Yeah.
We gave them sensation. Like, they're much better off. She ends up taking off, and they start pursuing her, and they shut the gate so that only one makes it through, because the rest are like right at the gates, like trying to get in, but only one gets through, because this gate Roland has apparently set up so that the Cenobites can't get through this gate. It's I don't know, infused with...
Yeah, it's got
like
magical casting, so...
the design makes runes or something.
Yeah, the runes imprison them, so they can't move past the bindings.
Yeah.
You know, typical magic binding spell. And the problem is, when Riley tried to get through the door, it got wedged. One of the Cenobites got wedged, so the door was never fully shut.
Yeah.
And this whole time, you know, Colin was trapped in the room with... he didn't know that Voight was there. Trevor's on the other side controlling the panels.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, Colin gets stabbed in the gut with the puzzle box.
Because Roland Voight is an impatient man.
And
he's like, there,
not only
done.
did he get cut...
Good sacrifice.
Not only did he get stabbed, he gutted him upwards, but his intestines didn't fall out.
No. I guess it wasn't deep enough, would be my guess.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, but from where I was standing, I was like, my reaction to someone stabbing and slicing up would not just be like, grab my heart and fall backwards onto the ground. I would be trying to grab my stomach to make sure nothing fell out. That's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah. Well, that's why he fell backwards. He's like, gravity will keep it in.
Yeah. And I don't even know if you can actually consider him a sacrifice, because he did not die.
No, but you think he's going to. Like, Colin takes off running, and Trevor, the asshole that he is, kind of is just like calmly walking behind him, like, come on back, Colin, come on back.
Just accept it, man.
Just accept it, Colin. Like, he's like a teacher that's lost complete control of the classroom and is trying to get the students to sit down. He's like, come on, guy, come sit down. Look, the lesson's starting. Please come sit down.
And so, it's funny because then Colin makes it down to the basement sex dungeon area again, right?
Where his question will finally be answered about what that room's all about. The Cenobite with the nun habit, who apparently uses wires and razor wire instead of chains, which I like. I like that. I think each of them should shoot something different out. So this one does wires and like wraps Colin up and then just starts squeezing.
It looks like his arms are about to chop off in several places.
Yeah, like the wires are just going deeper and deeper, and just you see blood like pooling around him. And
then you see his boyfriend Matt come out as like a lure. I don't know if he was
to
real.
talk to Riley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As like some type of lure. And Riley breaks free. She goes and she unlocks the door and has the Cenobite get free to try and, chase after Voight. She goes down and finds Colin. And so she makes her own little agreement. Like, what if I gave you Trevor instead?
Well, no. Actually, the Cenobite's the one that suggested, which I really liked. Because the Cenobite's torturing Colin and basically, like, gives her the nod and the wink of, like, well, this is the fifth sacrifice, unless you want another.
Yeah.
And kind of, like, looks over at Trevor, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. And he's like,
Trevor's
hold on,
well,
wait a minute.
Baby, please.
Yeah.
So, this is no real surprise, is that Trevor ends up with a puzzle box in his gut.
A puzzle box in his gut, and then he falls over where it's a waterbed, right? But then the waterbed falls away, and it's actually a pit to the hellscape.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautifully done. But at the same time, I was like a little confused about the aspect of bringing her brother Matt back as like, was he a Cenobite? Was he just like a ghostly apparition?
I think he was just ghost bait. I think
because that's what I thought.
If she had agreed and been like, okay, I want him back, then what she would have got would have looked like her brother. And probably had the memories of her brother, but would have been evil. Yeah. That's my guess. Like, we don't know because, spoiler, she does not take that boon. But, like, yeah, Matt is kind of dangled in front of Riley as a motivator. Yeah, for her to keep on keeping on.
Now
we cut back to Roland.
Alright, so and after we finish talking about him, I have a very big question to ask you about.
I have one too. Yeah.
Alright, so we cut back to Roland Voight. He finally demands, give me courtship, Leviathan, entertain my boon, take back your gift, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So what happens? The fucking harpsichord thing rips out of his chest. He has a giant hole crater, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna die. All of a sudden, his heel and his bones, all his muscle and sinew and bones start coming back, and he's healed perfectly.
Yeah.
Not a scratch on him. He's like, oh, I'm me again. And then, smack! Giant chain with a hook.
Now, this is a god-level chain. Compared to every other chain in this movie, this one was fucking huge. This was the chain attached to the anchor of the Titanic. Like, this chain was massive. Came out of the sky.
And impaled through his chest.
Impales him and yanks him up through the skylight. And I was crying. I was laughing so hard. Oh,
I laughed because I was like, you just got that fixed, bud.
Good on you, Roland.
I know, you just got that fixed.
Yeah.
And so he gets yanked up and lifted into the light of the Leviathan. Leviathan takes him.
And Pinhead's like, you know what? You don't want pleasure, you want power. We were mistaken. You were mistaken. You thought, through all this searching, all the orgies, all the drugs, all the money, all the fucking antiques, all the big houses, you thought you were seeking pleasure. But you weren't. You were seeking power. Let us give you the gift that we can.
Yeah, the power to control your life finally the way you see fit. And what does
boom,
Riley do? Riley, she gets back there and she's like, good on him. Fuck him.
Yeah, she comes rolling in with a weakened Colin. Actually, no, she leaves him outside. Colin's like, go finish it. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Riley comes back and then she's like, well, what do you want? And she's like, perhaps you want to bring back your brother.
Yeah.
Perhaps you want to...
The Lazarus boon.
Yeah, and then...
The Leviathan boon. Power, perhaps.
Yeah, and she's like, no, I want... You know what I want? I want nothing from you.
Yeah. Wise girl.
And so she's like, oh, that means you chose lament, which means that you will have to live with this regret for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Forever and always.
You made the sacrifices... And you literally got nothing for it. So those people died for nothing.
Now,
enjoy living with that.
This is the question I want to ask you.
Yeah?
How does this make sense? This is one of my only gripes.
Okay.
How do two people both get to ask a boon?
I thought about that.
How do these two people? Because
and how I justified it.
Each person has to sacrifice 5 people.
And how I justified it, and I don't, again, this is just me justifying, this isn't... It's not in the text. It's not in the movie. It's just how I did it in my own head.
Yeah.
I get what do you get headcanon. It's my own headcanon. Was that Roland wasn't ever the one getting the boon. She was the one getting the boon. But when they showed up to grant her boon, Roland was like, "What about me, dog?" And they realized that they could utilize him.
Okay.
So they took him.
Okay.
I think he thought he was the one getting the boon, but they just saw a useful tool. And they kind of did realize that they wouldn't have gotten her without him.
See, and that's why.
So they are, and I'm putting, you can't see this, audience, because this is not a visual medium, but I'm putting this in heavy air quotes. They wanted to reward him for getting her.
Okay.
So, but yeah, you're right. Like, technically it was 2 boons, but...
That's why I needed some clarity, and that was something that they kind of left out, and that's why I didn't give it, like, anything higher than 8.7, because of, like, the visual aspects and a couple of story aspects.
Okay.
Nothing that turns me away from the story completely.
Yeah.
Nothing that is like, oh, this is a god-awful movie, like some people.
Yeah.
This is one of, like, 2, maybe 3 little detail things that I had questions about that weren't quite answered.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that there's probably a lot of footage that was left out.
Yeah.
A lot of cutting room floor
might
shit.
be in the uncut, or it might be in the sequel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that, we're just going to have to live with, because I like the story as a whole, but that was one lingering question I had.
Yeah. Why 2 boons?
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
And if they would have explained it just a little bit more clear, like what was in your head canon,
I
would be like, oh, okay, perfect.
I consider it 1 boon and 1 recruitment.
Yeah.
1 army recruitment poster that Roland had.
No, it was just like a Walmart gift exchange. It's like, oh, you didn't like what you got? Here, we'll swap it out.
Yeah.
Here's something even worse. And that's what, if they could have explained it a little bit better like that, it's like, oh, we were never giving you another boon, dude. You've already got yours.
That would have been
We're just swapping them.
That would have been a nice line.
Alright, so that was one of my bigger questions near the end of the movie, is like, how does that make sense that both of them get a boon?
Yeah.
But, if we take at face value, let's just assume.
Yeah.
Whether that makes an ass out of you and me.
No.
We'll assume that that's what was meant to happen, is that it was never guaranteed he was going to get a boon, that it was actually just a, hey, we'll swap it out, no problem,
We're already here.
Yeah.
Well, you won't even have to pay for shipping, because we're already here.
But she did all the heavy lifting, so we're going to go ahead and give her the boon, you understand.
Also, if this is at all connected to hell and corrupting souls, like, they got his soul. That soul's in the bag.
Yeah.
So she's the one getting the boon. She's the one that needs tempting. You're tempted to all you're done. Like, you've been in the oven long enough. You are cooked.
So she gets freedom.
Yeah.
And she just leaves the configuration behind.
Yep.
She grabs Colin, and, he's a bloody fucking mess. His guts are probably about to fall any minute. His arms could be amputated too.
Here's to hoping he makes it to the hospital and just has
if he survives,
a lot of sexy scars that
I was gonna say, if he survives, there's some
his
gnarly
next
scars.
boyfriend will like. Yeah,
there's some gnarly scars to have, especially because it looked like it was like tattoos.
Yeah,
like shit you could get tattooed around. But they have their little somewhat happy ending where they get to walk away from all this scarred, bleeding, but alive with everything intact.
Yes,
for the most part. And then we cut away to seeing the Leviathan, and we go inside. We go inside of the Leviathan.
This is how the movie ends. It's with with Roland and the Leviathan,
and we see good old Roland in the crucifix position.
Let me ask you, another sky crucifix. Let me ask you a question. And this is probably where you're going, but is Roland? Did they just make him the new Chatterbox? Like, is he the new Chatterer?
Yep.
Because they kind of. Looks like a similar thing.
Yeah, I was thinking
they had to. That's why it's 1 boon and a job opening they had to fill.
My theory is that he is either going to be a replacement for the next one, or because they fucking ripped his skin off.
Yeah.
They ripped his mouth open.
Yeah.
All that shit. I was thinking he's either going to be a replacement Chatterer.
Yeah.
Or he's going to be the power source of the Leviathan.
Oh, that's cool.
Like a
little battery. A little sexy battery.
His constant suffering will have to be having to be the power source.
Yeah. You
want to be power? Okay, you're going to be the source of my power.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was my interpretation. I was like, it's either of those 2 things.
Yeah.
Again, it was one of those cool dangling threads. I'm like, hey, he could come in handy for a sequel if we do a sequel. If not, then he could just be that guy that is.
The movie was done well in that if it ended there, it's okay. Like, it tells a complete story. But you're right, there is a lot of room where they could expand and do more in a sequel. Which I would like to see.
The box was left behind. The box was left behind, so it could go into new hands.
I would like to see a sequel.
You don't know who's going to get it. You know, there's other different variations of the story from the Boom comic title line. Mm-hmm. You know me. I would love to see the Scarlet Gospel done in some type of live action iteration.
Yeah.
And Scarlet Gospel is another really good book of Clive Barker's. There's actually, I found out just recently, technically a sequel to Master of Illusions. Oh. Another book he had written. Because the detective that appears in Master of Illusions is the detective that we follow all throughout Scarlet Gospel.
Okay.
The one that we wind up being our unsung hero in Hell.
Okay.
And I didn't know that until one of my other buddies pointed it out, so I'm going to have to go back and read that.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you didn't know that, he doesn't play like a super main integral part of Lord of Illusions. That's a whole different person. Yeah. If you just went based off of his story from Scarlet Gospel and made only that, I think that would be phenomenal. Because you have Hellraiser mythos with the Cenobite lore just exploding. You see the denizen of where the Cenobites are in that, you know, that landscape. Yeah. You also see what hell looks like without Lucifer.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have the bids of power between different demons and non-demons, as well as, you know, people who are ancient entities. Yeah. I would love to see something like that happen, and if Hulu and Clive Barker are still going to team up, you know, and you want to spend a little bit more money, that'd be a good story to pull.
Or if you want to do it as like an animated thing.
Oh, animated. I would love
a good bloody Hellraiser manga, like or Hellraiser anime that is canon and that connects, that bridges the first and second movie. Like while they're working on the second movie, give us a really badass cartoon. With them. That takes place in hell. That way you don't have to pay for a hell budget.
And so, with that being said, you know, the ending of this Hellraiser, I do feel had a more complete version than the original. Now, the original was purposely meant to be a kind of open end because they knew that their movie was going to be a sequel. They knew that they were going to have to do, you know, they originally wanted to be one long movie, but they couldn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, once the first one came out, it was just a cult hit. Yeah. It slowly gained traction, gained them so much money. So when they did the second one, they brought everybody back. And that was the last time Clive Barker was hands-on with Hellraiser. He had done little bits here and there to try and help scripts before, but when the studios wouldn't allow him to help, he's like, all right, I'm gone.
Wash my hands of it. Right.
This being the first real Hellraiser project he's been a part of since the original two, it's awesome. You can see his inspirations. You can see what was his writing for sure.
You definitely see his hands on it.
Oh, without
fingerprints all over it.
Like anytime you look at the visuals, you look at the set direction, the lighting. Hell, even if you look at some of the visual layouts and stuff for color coordination, like you know the way the house had different tones to it.
Yeah,
that was a Clive Barker thing for sure.
Yeah,
and I love the redesigns, especially that they are a more gruesome modern take. You know, like, leather was in back then, so we didn't have a whole lot of, like, what could their outfits look like, you know?
Yeah.
It makes more sense now because, like, you know, what happens to skin when it's dead? It goes all gray and white and mushy.
Yeah.
And it looks like it would just be clothes hanging off of you.
Yeah.
So, I found an appreciation for that. I am never not gonna love Clive Barker or Hellraiser unless something terrible happens.
Right.
That comes to light.
Yeah.
Yeah, say that with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've been dying for this. I've been dying for this for so fucking long, because every time that I would tell you, oh yeah, there's a new Hellraiser or something that we've talked about, you'd be like, how was it? And I'd be like, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd get
it was
excited.
always a very quick conversation. We definitely have not talked an hour and a half about any Hellraiser before this one. No. So it's very good that we picked this one for the first episode of Judgmental Horror Junkies, because man, we filled it. We filled an hour and a half like champs.
Yeah, there was so much that we had to get through.
And I have one more question I want to ask you that might give us going another 20 minutes. I don't know.
What's your question?
What's your boon, man? What's your fucking boon, baby?
Oh, man.
Oh, the Macho Man would have a boon.
You know what? Because I know that it's all bad.
Yeah, you're gonna lament.
I would just go lament because I know it's a monkey paw situation.
Here's my question: can I give the boon to someone else? Because what I want to do is kill the people, and then when it's time to ask for my boon, I'm be like, I want you to give my good friend Goreship that.
He's so empty and doesn't feel anything. How about you give him the lineal? Give him lineal.
Give him a little. Give him a little. Poke a scrotum with some pens or something. I don't know. Do what you do.
I feel like if you've
got to take it yourself, I'll lament. I'll lament all day.
Whatever the boon was that gave you knowledge, I feel like if you would have chosen that, your head would have just been ripped open and they would have just been shoving shit in your head.
Knowledge would honestly, if you had to pick a boon besides lament, because lament's kind of the cop-out, knowledge would probably be the one I went with.
But I'm terrified of what
Learning,
they would do.
I guess it would
I'm
be.
terrified of what they do. Like their version of...
It's gonna be horrible.
Yeah.
But the scenario is, you have to pick a boon that's not lament. If that was the case, I'd pick learning. Because maybe I would get the learning on how to get the fuck out of this horrible situation I found myself in.
But it's just like you're chained up with hooks inside your throat and then your arms and shoulders pinning you up and your brain just being opened up and they're just constantly shoving shit into your brain. It's a never-ending cycle of stuff going into your brain. Each needle gives you a new fucking piece of knowledge.
But I kind of assume it'd be more like just a smack in the face of knowledge that like melts your brain so you just go into a coma. You're like the kids that looked into the deadlights in the It movie. Yeah, like you're just drooling on yourself in an asylum. And honestly, out of those scenarios, that's probably the best you can hope for. And somebody 15 years later is going to come visit you and ask you about the box and you're going to answer in riddles because you're just a melty brain at this juncture. That's the best you can hope for.
Alright, so my question for you,
alright,
to wrap this up, is we've established what our boons would be.
Yep.
Me, I want absolutely nothing to do with this.
You're lamenting.
I'll watch from the outside.
Yep.
You'll take the knowledge.
I'll take the knowledge.
You can't get enough of
the knowledge fight. Yeah, I'll take the knowledge.
So, with that being said,
all right,
if you were in the position where you didn't get a boon, but you saw the box laying there, what do you do with the box after all this is done?
Here's the thing, you can't get rid of it, right? In canon, when you try and dispose of it, it somehow comes back to you. So, I've got the box. So, I'm gonna find people I don't like and feed that box.
Okay, me too.
And then I'm gonna lament, because you don't have a choice. I guess I could throw myself off a building. I could just, if I was a selfless person, I would just kill myself before this whole thing got started.
If I didn't use it for the wickedness of just having people get taken by the box and lament every time that it got to the configuration, I would just put the box inside of a box inside of another box and then, add some concrete inside that box and then toss it underneath.
And then you turn around and it's on your desk again.
Yeah!
And you're like, fuck.
Yeah, I would see how far I could get. I was like, how much can I do to bury this? Or throw it in the ocean? Or can I, cover it in lava? If I cover it in lava in Hawaii, will that be... if I go to Hawaii and I travel with it, just toss into an active volcano.
I would try some shit. But, eventually I would either feed it or kill myself because, man, you can't beat that box.
Do you think if I tried to Jeffrey Dahmer it and, put it in a vat of sulfuric acid, it would melt? Probably not. It's magic.
I feel like one of the movies is going to be someone trying to destroy it. Going to research, going back to the little workshop in Italy where it was made or wherever it was constructed and, looking at clues and, then you find out that you've got to get a tear from an angel and the sword that Gabriel used to guard the gates of Adam and Eve.
This
and
is funny.
It up with that
I don't know why this made me think about this, but this is a fun little historical fact for you that ties to Hellraiser.
History me.
Hellraiser and the theory, the mythos of the Cenobites and Leviathan are an amalgamation of two things.
Okay.
Faust, the Greek tragedy story of Faust.
Yeah, that
which was basically a boon with the devil.
Yep.
And believe it or not, Pythagorean and his cult. I was
the math cult.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, they are linked. That's the amalgamation that makes up the mythos for Hellraiser.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yeah, I remember reading about that a very, very long time ago, and I was like, wait, Pythagorean was a cultist? And that's, that's where a lot of inspiration came from for, the origin of the Lemshard configuration.
Yeah.
And in Clive Barker's original tellings.
Well, I learned a lot today, actually. Wow, well, Goreship, that was super fun. I feel like we have, wrung out this Hulu Hellraiser towel until there's nothing left in it but sweat and blood. So
I'm very satisfied with that.
I am as well. Next month, I get to pick our feature of horror, and I've actually picked something on Netflix that I think came out a year ago, maybe two.
What's your poison?
It's called Sweetheart. Sweetheart. It intrigues me. I watched it and I fucking loved it, and I can't wait to watch it again for the podcast. It's Imagine if the creature from the Black Lagoon
watched
was
it.
scary. You're going to watch it again, and we're going to talk about it next month.
I love this classic new take on a classic Final Girl the Monster movie.
Yeah, the creature from the Black Lagoon, but what if scary? Which, if you... I have watched all the black and white Universal Monster movies, and that one I think is aged the worst.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see this film, which takes a breath, it's a breath of fresh air, a totally new, a new take on the scary monster that comes out of the ocean, out of the water at night to feed. So, come back next month. And
it's going to be a good one. It's going to be good. So for anybody that loves the classic horror monster cinema and Final Girl stories, this will be a great episode.
Or just horror in general. Get you some. This is Reno, Dino, Valentino, the Doctor of Death, and Goreship, the ship that sells the river Styx, saying to you, so long, Great, and we will see you next month.
Adios.